That's great.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right. Here we are. Thank you for being here, everybody. Although you don't need to have a degree in philosophy to do solution focus, it is my belief that having a background in solution focus, a background in philosophy will help you to become a better practitioner and a trainer of solution focus. When you read about solution focus, especially when you take Steve DeShaze's work, you come across a lot of philosophy and philosophers. And the goal of this session is to introduce you to some of these philosophical ideas, 4 philosophical insights that I hope will make a difference for you in how you do and how you teach solution focus. And I will do this by giving you a virtual round tour of the philosophy department, and we will start at the ethics department. The second stop will be the Department of Ontology. The third stop will be the Department of Philosophical Anthropology, and our fourth stop will be the Department of Language Philosophy. Now, when I was 18, my parents thought I was going to enroll at the University of Leuven, either at the medicine department or the Department of Psychology. But I went and registered for the Institute of Philosophy. And we were 14 in our year. It's a very small department, and we were very, very happy with our choice. It is, of course, a very positive choice to go and study philosophy because, yeah, it's something you love. Philein is to love wisdom, to love philosophy, and great friendships developed. And I want also to start this tour with giving you an opportunity just to have a quick chat with some people in this audience.
Oh, Jen,
And-
sorry, did you want to go out again? I just
And-
locked the door when I walked past.
Yeah, please lock the door from the philosophy
Would you-
department. It's always interesting. So in your groups, you can choose one of these questions. Why are you here? As you can see in the cartoon, I love this cartoon. What do you love about philosophy? How is it useful already in your work? Set up the groups and make sure that you can have a short chat. There'll be 4 or 5 people in your room. There you go. Yeah, thank you for coming back. Everybody was in the same room. That didn't work. They'll be back in 9 seconds. Sorry about this. Everybody was everybody was apparently in the same room, so maybe we can do it together here. What do you love about solution focus? What made you come here? Why are you here? How does philosophy already make a difference for you? Can I have some interaction? Susan, you are nodding and smiling.
Yeah, I'm actually also here because I always enjoy your presentations, Anton. And I don't think about the one yesterday. So it's not a joke. It's always very, very food for thoughts to meet you, Anton. And I think the philosophy stuff is crucial for solution focus, and that we are open-minded to look at what we are doing in different ways. And I think philosophy maybe is helpful for that. That's my short answer.
Thank you, Susan. Who else? Jerry?
Yeah, I just wrote that I was very sure I will see friendly faces in that session. And more seriously, I'm a big fan or follow reader of Wittgenstein. And I'm deeply thinking that solution focus is Wittgenstein in action.
Yeah. Nice.
I'm here.
Hey, so good to see you.
Hi, Anton. I'm here because I love you and I'd like to hang out with you for a while. And
Good.
everybody else who's here. Yeah.
That's so nice.
And
Maybe
maybe
one more
something
Hey, Wim.
in my mind is I'm a fan of Igor Stravinsky, the composer, and he says, all I do is restoring old ships. And that's something also for me, philosophy, art, history, all these things are things that we are not reinventing the wheel, we are building further on what has been.
Nice. Restoring all that. Let me take you to our first department, and it's the Department of Philosophy, of Ethics. It's our first stop. And ethics is, of course, the department where we ask the question, what do we need to do? And I want to start with a quote by Steve de Chazer. One of the most important reasons for therapy is to help clients change their lives. It's a justification for therapy and a test of it. It's a justification, that means it's why we are given the authority to work with these people, because they come to us with the question to change their lives. And it's also a test of it. This test is especially relevant for solution-focused therapy, which is organized to create positive change as quickly as possible. Solution-focused therapists treat this test as a major ethical standard to which they hold themselves accountable. The quote comes from Steve de Chazer and Gail Miller from the excellent article Solution-Focused Therapy as a Rumor. So, when people come to us with a question for help, they give us the authority to help them. We receive the mandate from our client, and this is an ethical relationship that is established, as Steve de Chazer points us to. Yeah. And what is an ethical relationship, or what is ethical here? It is an absolute proposal. It is something that is demanded of us. It's not relative. We don't have the choice here. And it's an absolute proposal. What is the difference between absolute and relative? There's a lecture by Wittgenstein from 1929 where he talks about ethics. And it's one of the few, especially in the early years of Wittgenstein's work, one of the few works where he talks about ethics, and it's a lecture that he gives. There he explains what the difference is between an absolute proposal, an absolute proposition, and a relative proposition. And it's quite funny. He says, suppose you would catch me playing tennis. And you would say, Ludwig, you play very badly. And suppose I answered, I know, I'm playing badly, but I don't want to play any better. This is good enough for me. Yeah. And all the other would be, then that's all right. If that's Wittgenstein's choice of how he wants to play, that is of course okay. But, he continues, suppose I had told one of you a preposterous lie, and he came up to me and said, you're behaving like a beast, and then I were to say, I know I behave badly, but then I don't want to behave any better. Could he then say, then that's all right? Certainly not. He would say, well, you ought to want to behave better. And here you have an absolute judgment of value, whereas the first instance was only a relative judgment. Yeah. So we have the absolute obligation to create positive change in our clients' lives. And that is the thing that we take from ethics. And it reminds me of a philosopher that is not quoted by Steve DeShazer, but a philosopher I like very much. His name is Emmanuel Levinas, from Lithuania, but lived in France, in Paris. And Levinas is of course known for his ethics. And he says ethics is the first philosophy. It all starts from this ethical relationship. It's through the other that we feel obliged to go on a quest and look for truth. Another interesting thing that Levinas said is philosophy is not the love of wisdom, it is the wisdom of love. But what we know from Levinas is that this encounter with somebody else is what makes us responsible. And being with other people, you have people that you know that are familiar to you. He calls it the other with a small o. It's my daughter who just walked into this room not knowing that I was going to give a presentation. It's my wife, it's my friends, it's a lot of you here. And we just treat them familiar. We are familiar with these people, and this is a normal relationship that we have, the neighbor, you know what. Yeah. But there's also the other big O, and that is the one that knocks at our door and calls for help. Yeah. When somebody calls at your door and calls for help, you have three options, Levinas says. The first option is you could say, let's ignore that person. Let's ignore or pretend that we didn't hear that person knocking on the door. And suppose I'm giving this lecture to you all here, and there's a neighbor knocking at my door, and he's bleeding, and he calls for help. Yeah. I could pretend I didn't hear him, but I feel guilty. Yeah. And where does that guilt come from? That is from the interaction with that other person. So he makes me responsible, and I can try to pretend not to hear it, but it doesn't work. The second thing I can do is you invite that person into your home, and of course you would treat that person well, but you could make him part of this session, and you would not pay attention to the otherness of the other, but you would invite him in your own world. Compared to solution focus, if somebody calls for help in a therapy or a coaching session, you could tell that person what to do because you do it that way. You use your expertise and everything you're familiar with to instruct that person what he needs to do. But then you are not respecting the otherness, Levinas would say, of that other person. Yeah. You're taking him into your own home. Yeah. And the third thing, and that is the most ethical thing to do, is that you open the door and you help that other person find his own way in his life. So, and that is what we do in Solution Focus. We are not telling them what to do. We help them to find their own way, using their own resources and whatever is happening in their lives. Yeah. Reminds me also of, while we're still here at the ethics department, of something that Yves Lipchik told us in a lecture when she once was in Bruges at the Korzybski Institute. She said, after she's given a whole presentation on solution focus, she looked over her glasses and said, in the first place, I want you to remember that in the first place, you are a human being. In the second place, you're a therapist. And in the third place, you're a solution-focused therapist. And she looked at us. And in that order. Meaning that in the first place, we have a relationship, an ethical relationship with the person that is calling for our help. And we need to treat that person very respectfully. So, this is a small visit to the ethics department. Takeaway from this department is doing solution focus is engaging in an ethical relationship where the other gives me the mandate. It's not because I'm a coach or I'm a therapist or a psychiatrist that I can just assume that I have the mandate to treat that person. It's the other person who gives me the mandate. And where I must refrain from reducing the other person to my understanding of that person. And that I should not be telling that person what to do. So what do? I help that person discover his or her own way forward, and as quickly as possible. Okay, that was the first stop. Second stop, we move from the ethics department to the Department of Metaphysics, or ontology. And ontology is the department where we ask questions like, what is it? What is reality? What is real? Now, in the modern philosophy, the modern times, or what you could also call in the mainstream philosophy, there is a tendency to look at the world and to discuss this question, what is real, to see the world as something that is objective in front of us. We focus on the things in the world. All these things, or beings as we call them in philosophy, are things that we can study, measure, classify, order, understand. You could say in mainstream philosophy, we treat this whole being as something that we can classify in a simple system. And this way of thinking is also found in science. There's a focus on understanding the world, measuring, finding the causes of why something is working this way or that way. And obviously, this is not the way that we look at the world in solution focus. We are familiar with terms like we treat the world as a complex system, or the client or the family as a complex system. What does that mean? I've spoken about the mainstream in philosophy, where we look at the world as something objective in front of us. And there you can think of Plato, Descartes, Kant, and Hegel. But there's always been a counter-history in philosophy. The French contemporary philosopher Michel Onfray calls it the contre-histoire de la philosophie. So for centuries there has been a subculture, so to speak, in philosophy that contested the idea that the world is stable out there and is just something for us to understand. They also contested the idea that we can make a comprehensive system of what is all out there. And you could also call this counter-history nowadays as the postmodern philosophies. Important protagonists there are Spinoza, Nietzsche, Husserl, Heidegger, Wittgenstein, Derrida, Lyotard, Foucault, Deleuze, all familiar names that do not belong to the counterculture anymore, because this counterculture in the 20th century became the more predominant culture. And I would even add Gregory Bateson to this group of thinkers who challenged the traditional way of viewing. So what is their philosophy? I will take some of these people. For example, Nietzsche and Foucault in his line, they said, well, it is vain to build a comprehensive philosophy. It's just to think that it is possible to make a complete system of everything that is out there. They say it all depends on your perspective. They also call it perspectivism. And how you frame reality is an act of power. It is something that you do. You install a worldview, and it is never neutral. Husserl, Edmund Husserl, he said, in the mainstream philosophy, we have always been talking about things, studying things. And what we did not take into account is our intentionality, how our consciousness relates to the things that are among us. And we need to put the world out there in between brackets, Husserl said, and focus on how our consciousness constitutes that world. That is already a shift from the traditional subject-object dualism. And Martin Heidegger, who was a student from Husserl, he went a step further and he said, well, our consciousness itself is already a part of a world. We live in a world where things already have meaning. We are thrown into a world where things have meaning, and we don't just constitute the world, also the world constitutes us. And with the world here, we don't mean the planet, of course, or the physical thing, but the context in which we are thrown, Heidegger would say. It's temporal, it's constantly changing, and we interact with that world. And more than that, this is not just a world which is uninhabited, it is a world which is, our Dasein, our being in the world is categorized by Mitsein, is being with other people, and together we constitute meaning. And these meanings change over time. So we are familiar with this idea of co-constructing meaning in solution focus. And then you have, we're in the tradition of phenomenology with Husserl and Heidegger. And to take it a step further still, we have a philosopher like Maurice Merleau-Ponty, the philosopher with the most beautiful name. He said, our being in the world is not just our consciousness or an interaction, it is a corporal interaction. Our relation with the world, our relationship with the world is physical, it's not cognitive. This was then further developed into inactivism. It's more contemporary philosophy, where they say that cognition is both embedded, our way of understanding is embedded, first of all, embodied. We understand the world by our physical interactions with it. It is also embedded in a context, in that world or world that already constitutes us. We just don't give meaning from ourselves. The meaning is there already. It is also inactive, our cognition. It is not a passive observing relationship we have with the world, but it is explorative. We explore the world. It's inactive. And it's extended. Our cognition goes beyond our body. We use some cognitive processes, you could say, are taking part outside of our bodies, like, for example, when you use a notebook, or you have links, or you have your smartphone, or maps, or books, or dashboards. This all contributes to our cognition. Stefan, you have a question, I see.
Please apologize. Do you share some slides? Just asking.
I don't have slides for this,
okay,
but I will share the slides that I have later on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I did not interrupt you. Sorry.
Okay. How does this all relate to solution focus? Well, of course, we are in that tradition where we say that the world is not stable. The world is not something out there that we can study, which is fixed and stable. It is constantly changing. We see the world as a complex system. It's an open system. It's always open for influences. We also understand the world as something that you cannot control, you can only disturb it. There's a beautiful quote by Fritjof Capra: living systems cannot be controlled, you can only disturb them. We see the world as interactional, where everything that happens is emerging from all the interactions that are taking place. It's not caused like in a linear causal relationship. That complex system is also unpredictable and ambiguous. It can have different meanings, and these meanings change constantly. And we also know that small changes make huge differences. Other thing that we need to take away from this is that we, in solution focus, we of course not only see the world as not stable, but we also consider that we cannot study the client as an object which is out there. We are always already influencing that client. That's why Steve de Chazer said you can't just talk about a client system. You always have to talk about the client therapy system. When you consider a family as a client system that you can study and maybe control, then you consider it as something that is outside of your influence of that system. No, you already are influencing that system already. And of course, meaning is co-constructed. Does this make sense? Any questions? So first stop was ethical department. Our relationship with the other is an ethical relationship, and he makes us responsible for good care of that person. Second stop was ontology department, where we consider the world as something that is constantly changing, and we interact with that world. Third stop is the department of philosophical anthropology. And this is not a study of the philosophical underpinnings of anthropology as a science. In this department, we ask the question, what does it mean to be human? Again, in traditional or that old mainstream Western philosophy, we treated that question as what does it mean to be human as a question for study. We studied human beings as objects. And what is typical in our scientific or modern approaches to that question is that we reduce being a human being to whatever department we're in. For example, in the psychology department, you could reduce the question of being human to a study of the eros and thanatos that are behind a person, the personal history, the traumas, the neurological aspects of being a human. In modern psychology departments, in biology, we would study the biology of people. In sociology, we would study the structures that determine people's behavior. In psychiatry, we would use the DSM-5 categories to understand behavior of people. And in HR departments, we often relate to DISC or MBTI or what have you. All these theories that help us to explain what it is to be a human being. But we are not doing this in solution focus and in those contemporary philosophies. Let me share my screen again. I want to share a quote by Steve de Chazer. Here, Steve says, traditionally, therapists have thought they had to penetrate the clinical situation, to see beneath or beyond the appearances. This is based on the assumption, which is a classical philosophical and scientific assumption, that the essence is hidden away in the psyche or in the system. However, other assumptions are possible. Perhaps nothing is hidden away and everything lies in plain sight. So instead of... Oh, I'm sitting in front of the quote. Instead of looking and constantly looking beneath or beyond the appearances, let us just look at what is open in plain sight. And of course, this is a reference to Wittgenstein's quote, "We must do away with all explanation." And explanation is typically a movement where what is seen is explained by referring to something else. And description alone must take its place. Yeah. So, this is of course what we do in solution focus. You could say that instead of going beneath or behind the appearances, what we find important is to remain at the surface, to look at people as our smallest unit of study. Yeah. Not go behind or beneath human beings, but see just the human behavior and see it always as interactional, related to you in the conversation that you have, or related to everything that is around that person. So that is our main focus in solution focus. It's the person in interaction with other people. So it does also mean that we just don't focus on an individual in itself, because you could, I think it was Bateson who said, studying an individual as a unit in itself is ridiculous. Yeah, you can. It's like studying the anatomy of a half chicken. Yeah, it's ridiculous. People are always people in interaction with other people. Yeah. So we look at people in interaction. We're not explaining people by referring to neurological systems or underlying structures. Yeah. And that is also why in solution focus it is important not to talk about people, but to talk with people. A very obvious relationship that is there in our solution focus world is that we are there. Like when I'm sitting here in my office and I have a client sitting in the sofa over there, it is all about the interaction of that client also with me. I'm not diagnosing, I'm not talking about, I'm having a conversation with that person. Yeah. And okay, this brings us to the fourth stop in our tour of the philosophy department, and that is the department of language, or the philosophy of language. The central question here is, what is language and what does it mean to have language? And in Eastern philosophy, there's a quote, there's a saying that says, the last thing that a fish discovers is the water. And maybe the last thing that we discover is language, and how important it is. You know that at Brief at the Brief Family Therapy Center in Milwaukee, there were often people sitting behind the screen looking at the sessions that were taking place. And on one particular day, Steve asked the office assistant to join in and to share her thoughts about what she was seeing. Yeah. And there was a session, a therapy session, I think it was in Zuckerberg, who was doing a therapy session with a mother and a child, and they were talking about bedwetting and stuff like that. And after half an hour, that person that was sitting together with Steve behind the mirror got up and said, "Oh, this is boring. All they're doing in there is talking." And she left. And of course, Steve, being Steve, took that very seriously. And said, "Of course, that is what we do. All we do in there is talking." So the language that we use is very particular. Yeah. And let me share my screen again for some final slides. In that same article, Solution-Focused Brief Therapy as a Rumor, Steve DeShazer and Gail Miller write, "The solution-focused language game is designed to persuade clients that change is not only possible, but that it is already happening. It is, in other words, a rhetorical process designed to talk clients into solutions to their problems." And we all know this one. When we engage in a problem-focused language game, the problems only get bigger. When we engage in a solution-focused language game, new things emerge. And you could say that every question that we ask is like a door that we open in the imagination of our clients. When we ask questions about what they want to be different, how that would look like, what is already happening that is going in the right direction, all the resources and counters that they can use, the possibilities, the next steps. In that conversation, we are changing the story of the client, and we are changing the way he navigates or she navigates or sees her world, and that of course changes our clients. And maybe this is appropriate, especially for the people in Europe, because we're almost ready to go to lunch. There's a nice quote by Mark, who said, "You cannot unscramble an egg." So when we ask solution-focused questions, we stretch the world of the client. And once that world has been stretched, there's no way of pretending that it didn't happen, that we didn't have these conversations. So it already makes changes. You cannot unscramble an egg. And of course, when people come to us, they come with a story, and it's a story of their lives and everything that is most of the time difficult. On a lucky occasion, you have a client who wants to talk about something that is going really well. I have one client, and every other year and a half, they give me a call and they say, "Oh, do you still remember me?" "Yes, of course. It is still going well in our department, so we would like to have a coaching so that we can find out what we are doing well." So that is a very nice client to have. So you do success analyses there. But most of the time people come with their story, and it's a story about a dreaded future or a problematic past or a situation that they're in. And we listen very carefully to that story. And we listen, and also the way that we listen makes a difference, because we are already disturbing that story just by the way we listen even. And I remember when we had training from Insu Kimberg in Bruges at the Korzybski Institute, she said, "You have to listen with your third ear, and your third ear is probably here." So when a client talks, you listen with your heart, and you fine-tune in your listening to what they say that is important to them, what they want, what is already working, and that is something that you can give back. And of course, we acknowledge the difficulties that there are, and we go and explore different aspects of their world by asking what do you want instead, and all these solution-focused questions that we have. So, dear people, this is the end of our short tour of the philosophy department. We started at the ethics department because it's the first philosophy. We went to ontology and how we see the world, and how that shifted in the history of philosophy from a world that is out there that we need to study to a world which is very interactional and changing all the time, and where our study of that world also influences that world. And then we went to the philosophy of anthropology department, where we looked at how we see people as our, and the interactions of people as our main point of focus, and not what is behind or beneath that person. So we don't reduce people to these aspects. We remain at the surface, and then finally it all happens in language, and we're very familiar with the idea that the way we let people talk about their world is very influential and changes them. Yeah. So we still have some minutes, and might be interesting to have some moments to chat and talk about what you heard, what you take away from this small tour through the philosophy department. Would you prefer to do that in a small group or in a plenary? We can do it in a plenary. What are your takeaways from this tour at the philosophy department? What are questions that you want to share?
Personal question, Anton. How does this knowledge of philosophy affect you as a solution-focused practitioner?
In many ways, I think, Suzanne, they once asked Martin Heidegger, what can you do with philosophy? And he answered, nothing. Philosophy does something to you. It affects me on a very personal level, deep level. I think I come, like many of us, from a very scientific background. Mark always jokes that he's a recovering scientist. Sometimes I think I'm a recovering modern philosopher. I think it has always been my struggle to get rid of all these old ideas about the world and about other people, where we try to understand other people, categorize them, or understand the world and try to find out how to navigate through that world. And these ideas help me to engage in a different way with other people and do the work in a different way. And it's hard. It's not evident for me. Even though I've been spending so much time at the philosophy department, I think we're so much influenced still by the traditional ways of looking at people in a scientific way. And also it relates to, and actually this lecture was given for the first time at the University Center of the University of Leuven, at the Psychiatric Institution. Yeah. And when I prepared for this session, I noticed I went and looked at all the research proposals for PhDs at the psychiatry department. Yeah. And they still, I think all of them, try to reduce human behavior to neurological concepts, biological concepts. It's where the research funding is to be found, I can imagine. But they are still acting as though all these philosophical insights from this past century have not taken place, and I find that astonishing. And especially if you see what is still going on in our psychiatry departments, it is treating people as objects for most of the time. And when you have friends who are assigned to these or hospitalized in settings like that, you see what devastation that also brings. So it's high time also to confront them with those ideas. Yeah. Thank you for your question, Suzanne. John, you had your... And Paul as well. John?
Paul, you were first, actually, so you go.
Sorry, Paul.
Okay. As an INTJ, you would say that. So, Anton, thank you so much. I love all the philosophical stuff, as you know, and as my degree. The point I'd like to make is that for positioning solution focus as a serious or credible force in the world, we've paid a lot of attention to case studies and results from interventions, which is great. So there's a research basis. It's equally important that it has an intellectual foundation, that we can talk seriously about how and why it does the things that it does, both in practice and in results. And this kind of philosophical background and structure gives us that. So more of this from everyone. Take it seriously, because it does make a difference to how we talk and what else we bring in. I love the ontology of solution focus, the way we constitute the world and relationships through the way we are speaking by admitting certain sorts of objects and concepts and not others. And again, we could take a list from what you've just been saying. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. And to remind people again of the important article, Solution Focus as a Rumor, there Steve de Chazer says there's two ways of talking about solution focus. The most obvious and the most maybe preferred way is to talk about what happens, what we can observe, what happens. But it is equally important to talk about the theory. And often we say in our solution focus community, oh, there is no theory, or there's a lot of theory and we need to take it seriously. It depends on what kind of theory that you refer to, of course. Yeah. John, please.
You actually did, it was kind of a throwaway, you said in that thing about the psychiatry department that a lot of the research is because of the funding. I was, as you were talking, I was sitting here or standing here thinking, why has SF not taken off more in those worlds other than research funding? There must be other reasons, because I sit sometimes and look at the television when they have people in drama where they have psychiatrists and things, and they're coming up with these things. I'm thinking, you're just guessing what's going on between the person's ears. And it just seems illogical to me that it's still the overwhelming way of looking at things, treating people as objects, as you said. So what other reasons might there be for that?
First of all, I think the good news is there's more and more solution focus also in our academia in Belgium, for at least. That's a good thing. The reason I got invited to talk there at the University Center for Psychiatry was a good sign. And there's a a lot of assistant psychiatrists now that follow the Korzybski training in solution-focused brief therapy. So, and the supervisors are really encouraging people to study solution focus. I've also been invited to a psychiatry department of a hospital in Bruges to give this lecture again, and because they want to know more about it. They saw the session in Leuven. I think when I talk to psychiatrists, there's a lot of they feel, of course, very responsible for their clients, and they are confronted with such challenging situations, so much difficulties, and so much pain and suffering, and pressure also from the families of these clients. I think that in that panic, they resort to the traditional stuff that they know. That it's instead of going along with the complexity and the multitude of things, they try to be as certain as possible. And if you try to be very certain about human situations, then you try to reduce them to underlying categories or biological stuff, and then you try to resort to your theories and your medication and stuff like that. But they also, I had a very interesting conversation with a psychiatrist a couple of years ago. He said, we are desperate. We know that we are failing. It's a very uncomfortable position, so that might be an opportunity to present them with something else. But this difficulty of people to deal with the complexities of life, of the complexity of the world, of all these possibilities, makes them resort to very traditional ways of thinking, I think.
Thank you.
Are there other people having other thoughts on that?
Just put it in the chat, and it reminds me of the movie "An Ecology of Mind" with Nora Bateson. And Bateson says, "Why do people work in these frames?" And he says, "It's convenient. Maybe sometimes it's for them necessary, but it's an illusion that you can capture the thing, but it's convenient."
Yeah, and it gives them an air of expertise. Yeah. Okay. Other reflections or questions?
Suzanne has a hand up.
Yeah.
Suzanne, thank you.
Yes, I used to work in the medical settings for 26 years. And still, I'm now part of a project where we do solution-focused training in schools, and we try to work with mental health, and we try to take it from the angle of not fixing the problem, but building what is really affecting, what makes the pupils' flowering health, what is building actually the mental health, and not taking away the problem. And still, we have the golden standard in all research, at least in Sweden, is still the RCT studies and about looking from the angle of solving a problem. So it's not a perfect fit with solution focus in the way we do the main research in the world. So I am so grateful for being on this with the researchers who really are senior researchers and very interested in this other way of looking at things, both how we deal with the mental health and not the mental illness, actually, because 90% think we are working with that, and also how we try to do the research in a more, salutogenic way. I cannot explain really good in English now, I feel, but this really, So all of you who do research on solution focus and do this and have this other view, and Mark, you will speak on that later. I hope I can attend. important discussion on a higher level.
Yeah. And that also reminds me of, I think what is important, we've always treated people's problems or seen people as bringing problems to the therapy room. And there we use our traditional way of thinking. We need to study the problem, study it as an object, try to find the root causes and stuff like that. And then we know, and that gives us... that gives us certainty. And then if you can rely on traditional methods, then you feel safe and you followed all the methods, but in the end, if it works or not, as long as you follow the methods. So the operation was successful, but the patient died. It's a joke there. But I think I was thinking lately about how to call this solution focus. Is it a method? I don't like to call it a method because a method seems very methodological and you know what to do when a problem occurs and you do that. And what I like much more is to call it an approach, so the solution focus approach. And what do you approach? You don't approach a problem, you come closer. Approach means you come closer to a human being that comes to you because he or she has a question. Yeah. And first off, you work together with that person, like what Yves Lipschitz reminds us. In the first place, you're a human being together with that other human being. Yeah. And you make sure that you create a context in which that person can find new ways towards their solutions, instead of reducing them to a problem, categorizing that problem and applying all your methods and therapies to that. Okay, people, we come at the end. Thank you so much for listening in, for giving me the opportunity to share all this. Thanks everybody I have been drawing a lot from all the conversations I already had with many of you in this community. So I'm very grateful that I could give this back, and I hope you still enjoyed the rest of this SF24. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anton.
Thank you for recording.
Thank you, Anton. Big hugs.
Big hugs. See you soon.
See you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Anton. That was excellent.
Thank you, John. Good to see you.
That
was
really,
it
really
at your
good.
place?
It's 10:30 at night. I've been on the go since early hours of this morning, so I'm just about it. Yours was the last, but I didn't want to miss it, and I'm very glad I didn't. It was, very thought-provoking. Thank you. I think everybody enjoyed it, actually. That was great. But, so, see you soon. Take care.
See you soon, John. Thank you for the feedback.
Anton, I'm not sure if I am actually recording this, so when we close the meeting, if it appears, I will share it, but it might be on your computer. Maybe you work it out.
I can see opname.
It's recording. It's definitely recording, but